To reflect on the legacy of late former Zambian President Edgar Lungu, we are going to be joined by geopolitical analyst Aaron Ngambi. Aaron, a very good evening. Thank you for your time with us here on the SABC at this hour.
Good evening, and thank you for having me.
So we're obviously looking at the life and times of the former Zambian president. He served as the sixth president of the Southern African nation, having passed away now today. And I wonder if we look at how he was both lauded and criticized for his tenure, perhaps also, the milestones under his leadership as well. What comes to the fore as we reflect on his life and times?
Well, so many things come to mind when you think of President Lungu and also his legacy as the President of the Republic of Zambia, the sixth president, as you said. He's probably one of the most criticized president while he was in office. In fact, even myself, I was very critical of his administration. I wrote so many articles in the Zambian newspapers and pointed out so many things that I thought was wrong at the time. And that is to say that he made mistakes as a president, but also he made great achievements in terms of his political career. President Lungu came from almost nothing to becoming the president of the Republic of Zambia against all odds. He served in various portfolios as Minister of Justice, Minister of Defense within a short period of time, and then took over the presidency after his predecessor, President Michael Sata, died in office. So he has a very interesting legacy that he's left behind. For 7 years that he was president, he ushered in the 2016 amended constitution that is currently the constitution of the Republic of Zambia. And within that constitution, there were some clauses that were very progressive. It's probably one of the most progressive constitutions we've had since the previous amendment of 1996. So things like dual citizenship and other things like that are clauses that will remember President Lungu for, because that is his legacy. Also, he embarked on a lot of infrastructure development for Zambia. He basically changed the landscape of how the country looked, even though that was at the expense of contracted loans and things that he had to do at the time. Unfortunately for him, when he was president, we had the COVID-19 pandemic. That was probably the test of his leadership, but all in all, he took measures that protected the Zambian citizens. He made sure that people were able to afford 3 meals a day. He was able to do everything within his power to sage through that pandemic era. So he leaves a mixed legacy of so many gains as well as things that he could have done better, just like any other politician.
Yep, saints and sinners, they obviously realistic as people. And then, thank you for weighing in and giving us a succinct overview of some of the milestones in his life and times. I mean, having passed away at the age of 68, that is relatively young. This obviously follows that court ruling preventing him from running for office yet again. He was a lawyer by training. You spoke to some of the misses as well as the hits. And another issue that obviously has come to the fore is some of his economic policies. There was the Copper Belt debacle. That definitely received a lot of criticism. I wonder if we could look at the impact that had in relation to mining, perhaps also to, jobs at large, the economy, what impact this would have also had for him to, end his tenure and for President Hichilema, in fact, to now take office following him.
Yeah, I think that the guiding principle for some of the decisions that President Lungu made in office as the head of state, especially with regards to mining and economic independence, was very much a Pan-African outlook. I think that President Lungu, and by and large, that's why he was not really loved by the international community in terms of the multilateral corporations that run some of the mines in Zambia. In fact, some of the mines had to even sponsor and favor his opponent, who is now President Hakainde Hichilema. But one of the things that he did on the Copper Belt was that he literally was able to make sure that the Zambian government takes over one of the biggest mines, the Mopani copper mines. And because he didn't like how Mopani copper mines was run by Glencore, and that he thought that was an exploitation of resources by a multilateral corporation. And so his outlook in terms of the economy and in terms of looking at Zambians' self-reliance and dependence on mineral wealth and resources was more of looking out for the common person, for lack of a better term. But of course, the process was not smooth. It was controversial. There were other things that people were concerned about in terms of the takeover of Mopani. Unfortunately, I think that after he left the presidency, there are more Zambians who appreciated some of the things that he attempted to do after the fact. And even though some were very critical, including myself, about some of the decisions that he made when he was in office. But looking backwards, I think that he had a different outlook on how he thinks the Zambian economy should go. And he was really looking out for the individual, ordinary Zambians and how they can benefit from these resources. I'll give you another example. Sure. The Kansaseli gold mine is an example of how President Lungu began to build gold reserves for Zambia as a means to position Zambia in terms of economic resilience, in terms of being self-reliant. That is something that no one had ever done before as a president of the country. So he had all of these plans that he wanted to put in motion. Unfortunately, he lost power in 2021 to his opponent, who is now President Hakainde Hichilema. And President Hakainde Hichilema has reversed some of those gains that President Lungu made. And we know that President Lungu made a comeback and he wanted to run in the upcoming elections, which will be next year, August 2026. But again, the case of him running was decided in the courts for the fourth time. This is the time that the courts actually self-corrected the decision that they made in 2021 that he was eligible. The same court decided later on that he was actually not eligible. So he is a controversial figure, and he has done a lot of things in terms of politics, in terms of how he ruled the country. But by and large, I think that people appreciate him more after the presidency of what he was trying to do.
Well, Aaron, I need to wrap up. I just want to perhaps look at his relationship to Western donors, particularly U.S. donors. When, you asked the U.S. ambassador to withdraw from Zambia in 2020, perhaps we can also just look at, the relationship to other African leaders as well, the impact that he would have had amongst them and vice versa. Tell us about those, milestones that come to the fore.
Well, when you look at the relationship of President Lungu and the donors, especially when he was in office as president, I know that the Americans were very much hostile towards the way that he was doing things. But also, by and large, it's because of things that the Americans wanted to implement or influence in Zambia, such as, the gay rights movements and in terms of seeing those as human rights. And the Lungu regime was not very much favorable towards that. Therefore, there was that misunderstanding. But I'll have to let you know, and your viewers, that when he left office and he wanted to seek medical treatment, the Hakainde Hichilema administration tried to block him, restricted him, and refused for him to go abroad and seek medical attention. It took the American ambassador, the current American ambassador, to intervene behind closed doors to let President Lungu go to South Africa and seek medical attention. So some of these differences that we saw in his administration with donors and others were more political and temporal rather than permanent. And like they say, there are no permanent friends and no permanent enemies in politics.
Yeah, well, we continue to obviously reflect on his life and times, of course, news just coming in today that he passed away. And so thank you, Aaron Ngambi, for joining us at the SAW and for weighing in.